Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Patriots Pulse podcast. This is what I think week three in a row now, so we're kind of getting back in a groove of it. For some of you new listeners, we are going to start posting our podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. So welcome in if you're finding us from there, and if you're just a live viewer from X, welcome back. Like I just mentioned, we're kind of getting in the groove of things now. It's been 3 weeks in a row that we've gone live, and it's just one of those things that we want to make sure that we're being consistent with. And with that being said, we also want to continuously put out new topics and stories and just conversation about the Patriots. And what who better to speak about it with than Andrew from Pat's Pulpit? How are
Uh,
you, Andrew?
I'm great, Carlos. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It was a rough I don't want to say ending to the game yesterday. I don't want to just take away everything that happened, but it was a long game that had a very anticlimactic ending. I'll put it like that.
Very annoying ending.
Very.
All
Yeah.
those timeouts at the end, and then I was scared for a second. I was really hoping that preseason games don't go to overtime, and I found out that they don't. So that was that was nice.
Yeah, I've never been more excited for a game to just end in a tie.
No, and you put it like perfectly that it was just such a anticlimactic ending.
Mhm.
Um, like Patriots went up with that touchdown 10-0 to Kyle Williams, and then Anthony Richardson and the Colts responded, and then it was they kind of just traded field goals back and forth, and then Andy Borregales or well, Brent Morton pushed that offense down the field at the end of the game into field goal range. Andy Borregales had a chance to win that game, and kick went wide left. So, like you said, very anticlimactic ending.
Yeah, I mean, if you not to start off on a negative note, but if there was someone in particular that's going to be or that should be playing a lot this coming season that stood out in a negative way, it was Andy Borregales. It was a very unfortunate series of events in terms of his kicking, and like you said, like a unfortunate way to end the game in terms of him missing that kick. Like you said, Baron Morton got them down the field. I believe it was a pass to Kobe Prentice that got them like a big chunk gain. Kobe Prentice was for some reason one of the most like highly targeted guys while
Legacy
he
man.
was on the field. Um, but yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways, like I said, from the guys that are probably going to contribute the most this season, or at least hopefully contribute the most, Andy Borregales probably had the worst night out of everybody.
Yeah, and Mike Vrabel kind of put it. I mean, after the game, he was just saying pretty much that the team is expected to make those kicks. Borregales was 2 of 5 on the night, and it's really interesting how streaky games can be for kickers because there was one where it was one of the deeper ones he hit that it was a low snap and he recovered and put it through the uprights. Like that was impressive. And then he misses 3 of his 5. So that's really something that you would hope he cleans up. And he said after the game that he's really not going to dwell on it and he doesn't want it to shake his focus moving forward.
Mhm.
So we'll see what happens with that, especially next week.
Yeah, and to jump into a more positive note, it's crazy that we're starting off with special teams, but I do want to point out that speaking of consistency and like that streakiness, Bryce Behringer had a really good night. I think that he was like one of the more consistent players that he it's because sometimes you're used to like him getting a shank like in one of like five punts, for example. But he had a pretty good night, and I think it's now time that we jump away from special teams so people don't get bored.
So what do you want to start with here? I mean, we could start with the defense. I think
Yeah.
that was a big thing, especially their 4 takeaways, 2 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries for that group. And I think that that was the reason that they didn't lose. The
Mhm.
offense really wasn't producing at a level where they were really staying ahead of the Colts and adding on to their lead. It was
Mhm.
actually continuously subtracting, um, and Yeah, I think the defense played a huge role with those takeaways. I mean, you saw it at the goal line stand with I think it was Jeremiah Farms who punched that ball out for on against Anthony Richardson on that QB sneak. Dale Pettis recovered, and then that other fumble, Anthony Richardson was scrambling into the red zone after their punt return. I forget his name. I think it was Coleman Owen. Actually, he had that 27-yard return. Anthony Richardson scrambling into the red zone, and it's punched out again by KJ Britt. So defense really did a good job with shutting down drives where it felt like the Colts were gaining momentum.
Yeah, and I don't want to take away from the turnovers that they had, but that one on the goal line, the Colts running back had the ball like on the actual line of the goal line for maybe like 2 seconds, and then someone punched it out, and the ref said, "Okay, that's a fumble." Like I said, I'll take the turnover, but that was an interesting call. Shout out Del Pettis for the recovery. I think that was good awareness. Like I said, the play might have been viewed as dead, but the whistle didn't blow, so they just played into the whistle. But yeah, I think in terms of the players that stood out the most on defense, I would say KJ Britt, who you mentioned, who had that he had like a nice tackle for loss, which he followed up with a punch out on on Anthony Richardson, which I think
Mhm.
was like one of the more like impressive plays or consecutive plays of the game. And then
Yeah.
I would say if there was someone else that stood out to me, I think it was Jeremiah Farms. I think he didn't have like a I guess you could say like a highlight play, but in terms of his stats, and I think PFF had him down for about like 3 pressures or something like that. I have to double check, but he was like one of the more standout guys that was disrupting the backfield. They were running games like towards the end of like I think the fourth quarter, which you don't really see in a preseason game. But that defensive line did really well. So I think Jeremiah Farms and KJ Britt were the two that really stood out to me.
Yeah, and Farms is a guy who's been around on this team for a couple of years now.
Yeah,
He signed after he was like a UFL standout, I think it was,
yeah.
a couple of years ago, and he's kind of hung around on the active roster, sometimes the practice squad. But yeah, that's a guy who is competing. He's like on the roster bubble. He's competing for a
Mhm.
spot on the final roster this year, and he's making the most of his opportunities. And I think the depth at other positions also shined a little bit. I think you could say
Mhm.
Braden Swenson had a pretty good game last night. He showed quite a few flashes, just generating quick pressure. Um, and then Gabe Ackus, I think he showed a lot of just his sheer like power as a pass rusher and his ability to just kind of stay balanced while he's doing that. I think he got a little aggressive sometimes against the run, like you saw Anthony Richardson on that read option get around him.
Mhm.
But I mean, I think that's something that will improve over time. But what did you see from the depth in the edge room?
Yeah, I think Braden Swinson was the guy that took advantage of his opportunities. It was a weird rotation that they had going on. I think they started the game with Akis and Quintavious Hutchins to start. Like that was a weird like duo, in my opinion, the two rookies, and then they ended it off with Jesse Luketa and Braden Swinson. I think Jesse Luketa and Braden Swinson looked much more stout, if that makes sense. They seemed like they were more like NFL ready players, which obviously they're rookie or they're not. The other group was full of rookies, so I think that they impressed more. Yes, they were probably playing against third, fourth string offensive linemen, but they made the most of their opportunities. I don't think Quintavious Hutchins made that much noise. Like you said, Gabe Akis made some good plays. For some reason, Mike Vrabel was very like I guess you could say like standoffish about his performance. He didn't really want to mention him too much. And when he did get asked about him, he was very like, yeah, he made good plays on kickoff, or he made one good play on kickoff. So it was pretty odd, like hearing his reaction to it. My assumption is that he just has a very like high standard for him. Mike Vrabel always likes to say that he doesn't go into anything with expectations, that it's just like free flowing. He says that over and over again, but for Gabe Akis in particular, I think he just has a very high standard for him. He probably really likes him, and he just wants to see more out of him. So for him to only point out like one good tackle on kickoff was a bit interesting. I think he's still gonna like make an impact this season, but to wrap that all up, I think Braden Swinson was probably the most advantageous of his opportunities of those outside linebackers.
Yeah, and it doesn't surprise me, like, if that is true that Mike Vrabel, like, expects a little more out of Akis because we were hearing, like, over the summer and just Vrabel's giving him crap, making him come up and, like, introduce himself to the team, like, 5 times.
Mhm.
and like making them like have to tell a joke to the whole group, and try and get them to laugh. But yeah, what you see from the cornerback depth as well? I think that group kind of showed out.
Yeah, I really liked what I saw from Karam Prunty. One of the things that I like to do is chart the stats while I watch live, and I didn't really understand how PFF had him down for being targeted twice and letting up a reception twice. What PFF does, just for anyone that doesn't know, is that if the closest corner to the player that's catching the ball, they'll count that as like a reception that they gave up. While I was watching the game live, I didn't see him get any targets caught. I don't know why I worded it like that. But the one time that his receiver was targeted was the batted pass by Braden Swinson. So besides that, I believe he had about 23 coverage snaps, and he never got targeted, or like I said, that one target was batted down. So I think he did exactly what he needed to do. His side of the field was pretty much ignored. If you watch back the film, like whoever the quarterback was would scan his side of the field and quickly look the other way. I'm not saying he's some like lockdown corner, but it's really good to see out of your fifth round pick. And then obviously Kindle Vildor, he had that nice interception to start off the game. So it seems like them two are pretty much like shaping out the depth at corner. Charles Woods didn't play, who's typically been the fourth corner behind Gonzo, Carlton Davis, and Marcus Jones. But if they're going to carry three more corners, it seems like that's the top three right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really think like whoever they pick from this depth group, I think can end up being a pretty solid option. Just how this room is kind of transpiring over time. They had a bounce back uh, performance, I would say, from that joint practice against the Colts. But I mean, it seems like they have pretty solid options for a fifth or even sixth corner after the starting
Mhm.
three, and then Charles Woods, who has been absent recently. So we've been able to see a lot of these guys like Vildor, Canada, Prunty. And speaking of Prunty, I think he's been playing like really physical. We saw him on a third down. I think it was like a wide receiver screen. He
Yeah.
forced the receiver inside and then into Canada, who then stuff the play and then shut down that Colts drive. So I mean, really encouraging effort from that group to bounce back, I think.
Yeah, and I also want to point out that Channing Canada, he's also been someone that's like on the bubble of making the team as one of the last corners. He was on the field a lot. They played him a lot, and I personally I didn't expect him to play so much in the slot. Maybe I just haven't been seeing like the training camps where he's lining up, but he was like consistently their top slot corner almost the entire game. I think he played into like the late third or mid third quarter. He did let up a good amount of catches, but I do like that he was around the ball a lot, whether that was when like a running back was coming into his area, or if someone else's receiver caught the ball, he was right there ready to tackle them. So that was good to see. But yeah, I think it's pretty clear that it's going to be Prunty, Vildor, or Woods that are going to be those depth corners.
Yeah, and I think that Canada as the slot like nickel corner, it was a recent development. I think in the like most recent practices they started putting him there. So hey, playing a whole game there after like not doing that for most of the summer. It's a
Mhm.
good effort. But going to offense, what were some of your takeaways there?
Yeah, honestly, my biggest surprise when it came to offense was the tackle play, specifically for Marcus Bryant, and then Jem Miller. I I don't know if I just haven't really thought about Jem Miller just because of my bias towards Len Larison, but I thought Jem Miller was a very like aggressive and explosive runner. Like every time he got the ball, he was like it was like he was getting shot out of a cannon. Like he was not afraid of contact. He like I said, he looked explosive. Like the second he got it, it was like a quick burst. I think that was like one of the most impressive things about his game. So it was good to see that. And then just because I mentioned Len Larison as well, I also want to point out that because of that RB3 competition with Terrell Jennings now going on IR, it's interesting to see like how different their skill sets are. Like Len Larison was a big factor in the receiving game, while Jam Miller was more of a factor in the running game. And you would like to get production in both aspects from one of them, but it's I don't know. It's going to be a fun competition, in my opinion.
Yeah, now they add Hassan Haskins, Jermichael Hasty's back. This is actually Hasty has now played under three Patriots head coaches in his time in the NFL, which I think is kind of funny because he's just bounced around year after year. Always finds his way back. Um, but you have all these bodies in the room now, and like you said, they have all sorts of different skill sets. I think really what this final roster is going to come down to for the running back room is the coaching staff is just going to pick like what type of backup skill sets they want to have. Like, do they want Lamb Larson, who provides a little more receiving upside, maybe Hassan Haskins, the bigger body, strong runner, or Jam Miller, just the absolute boulder backup behind Ramondre and Trevion. So yeah, like you said, it's going to be really interesting to see, especially with Terrell Jennings, who I think has been perfectly fine number 3 running back and was that last season. So it's kind of disappointing to see him on season-ending IR for this year, especially after he just came back off of the PUP list. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how that shapes up. And then, like you said, Marcus Bryant moving people in the run game. He had a really productive game, last night. And then Caleb Lomu as well was another guy I think a lot of people were keeping an eye on. And I mean, he had his ups and downs, definitely, but I think there's definitely like progress with what we've seen from him.
Yeah, I think one of the things, sorry, I was looking, the Patriots just posted a video of AJ Brown and Drake May on the sideline while the tarp section was going crazy. And I was getting distracted because every time I see them together, I get happy. Anyways, I was going to mention, so for Marcus Bryant in particular, I think it's been a very like interesting development that he is looking really good at left tackle. And the reason I say that is because last offseason and last preseason, it was a bit shaky every time he played on the left side, but on the right side, he looked much more sturdy. I feel like he had less mistakes. He wasn't getting beat as much, but now it feels like a complete 180. And I'm not saying that he can't play on the right side anymore, but just to see his development at the left side, it's good to see. And if people were kind of just um, automatically saying that Caleb Lomu was going to be the swing tackle, Marcus Bryant is really pushing for that position now as well. He's been playing extremely well whenever he is given opportunity, and I think last night I just posted about his PFF numbers. He had 0 sacks, he had a clean sheet, and he had an 85.6 block grade, which pass block grade, which was a team high. And then on top of that, he had a team high in offensive grade, which was 79.6. I don't put too much weight into PFF's grading system, but just the fact that he was able to stand out on a team wide perspective, I think is very good to see. And on top of that, for him to have 27 pass block snaps and not give up anything, that's like all you can ask for from a 7th round pick from last year that, like I said, only pretty much played right tackle um, coming into his rookie season. He was the left tackle at Missouri, and that's why it was odd seeing that he was struggling on the left side last year, and now I guess he's getting back into form. Like Mike Vrabel pointed out that he got much stronger over the offseason, and that was something that he really liked. I think it was really, I don't know if you remember from last offseason as well. Vrabel loved talking about Marcus Bryant. I don't know why he was one of his, you could tell he was one of his favorite rookies. Like a lot of people really liked him. So it's good to see that someone that they trust, someone that they have been putting a bunch of time and effort into, you're seeing that development now.
Yeah, and especially for a room, the offensive tackles, just the last few years, not a lot of depth. We've seen that group like constantly recycle guys into that starting lineup. Just that last year, Bill Belichick, that Gerard Mayo year. It seems like there's a little more comfortability with the depth that they have at that group now. And then you have Will Campbell at left tackle, Morgan Moses at right tackle. You have your first round pick, Caleb Lomu, and now Marcus Bryant, who's really starting to come into his own. He's stepping up, and like you said, he's kind of pushing a little bit for that swing tackle role, which he held a little bit last year. And then, you have Demetrius Crownover as well, James Hudson, who has been repping kind of like inside a little bit too. I see you smirking, and I think I know exactly why.
He's an interesting guy.
Well, he was repping with the second team on the interior over the last couple of practices. I don't remember I don't know if he did for the joint practice against the Colts.
I'm pretty sure he did.
He was before that. Okay. Yeah, a lot more comfortability, I think, with that group heading into this year than previous.
Yeah, and if we're going to talk about the offensive line, we should point out as well the lack of depth that they have on the interior. It's pretty concerning right now, especially with Ben Brown going down. Andrew Rupsich also went down. Is it Rupsich or Rupsich? Which one do you say?
Couldn't tell you.
Okay, I'll go with Rupsich though. But yeah, that is pretty concerning. They had Greg Van Roten in last week, I believe, for a visit, a veteran in offensive lineman. So he's someone that I wouldn't be surprised if we get news that he got signed just because of those injuries. But yeah, I think it's gonna be pretty interesting to see how they maneuver that interior because if Ben Brown and Repsich have to miss some sort of time, like even if it's a week, they still need guys taking those reps. And it can't just be like, oh, we'll put the next guy in because then who's gonna take their reps? I don't think they're just gonna pile on a bunch of reps on certain players. So I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in some sort of interior offensive line depth and like even if it's just a camp body, I do think that there's going to be some sort of ripple effect because they have to open up roster space if they do that. So it'll be interesting to see like what happens, whether someone goes on IR, someone gets waived. I think it'll be interesting to see because it's going to shake up the end of the roster, which a lot of people might not find important, but for someone that's obsessed with the team like you and I, it's pretty interesting to see like how they'll handle that situation.
Yeah, and I think they have to add someone at this point. If I mean, it depends on the severity of both the injuries. I mean, Mike Vrabel said they'll have to do more tests on Ben Brown today,
Mhm.
and then Repsich, really no update on what that may be. He
Mhm.
did walk off under his own power at least, so that was a good sign.
He
But
stayed on the sideline, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
he what?
I'm pretty sure he stayed on the sideline the rest of the game.
Yeah, I think he did.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, if those guys are out for an extended period of time, that's a majority of your second team interior. You had Ben Brown at
yeah.
center, Rupsich left guard, and then you had James Hudson at right guard. I'm pretty sure. Um, so yeah, they're gonna have to look for guys like Makai Butler to possibly step up, or I think Jacob Rizzi filled in for Ben Brown at
Yeah,
center as well in that game.
and he's been
So
working with Baron Morton most of the offseason, so it's
mm,
interesting that now he's gonna have to work with Tommy DeVito, who does Baron Morton get to work with? It shakes things up more than people think.
no, yeah, it definitely does.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
And then I think another area we should definitely talk about is receiver a little bit. You saw
mhm.
Matt Collins, Keishon Booty. They played the first quarter with Tommy DeVito. DeVito targeted Hollins, I think it was 4 times. He tried him deep as well, but then Keishon Booty, no targets. Do you make anything of that?
No, not really. I think that you also have to consider that they have to play receivers. I'm not saying that it's fair for Booty to be one of the guys playing, but if they're viewing him on the same level as Matt Collins, that means he's not like some sort of just like obsolete player on
Mhm.
the depth chart. Like he's still gonna get some run. But yeah, I don't really think much of it. I think Tommy DeVito had a good game, like in terms of the decisions he made, but some of the throws he was making, like on that Matt Collins deep pass, I don't know why he didn't launch it. There was also that Kyle Williams one as well that he just didn't launch it for some reason. So I think in terms of what the receivers showed, I liked. Obviously, they couldn't really produce with the throws that they had on those big plays, but I do like what I saw from the receivers.
Yeah, and Kyle Williams, I think he was that kind of standout performer in that room with that touchdown in the second quarter, being that defensive back. I don't know who it was, like
I don't remember.
right off of his release off the line of scrimmage. And then, like you said, DeVito tried him deep again later, but like wildly underthrew him. And then Vrabel talked about it after, and because he spoke with Williams on the sideline, talking about like him having to make an effort to come back to the ball and not giving up in a way on the play and just like keep going downfield and hoping that the ball like reaches him.
Mhm.
Um, so I, I think with Kyle Williams, you need more consistency. I think that's the big thing with him. Like we see these flashes, and it's kind of similar to Braden Swinson. I think you see these flashes now. We need to kind of expand on them. We need to see him more often. I think that's kind of where we're at with him.
Yeah, and not to I feel like some people are gonna get mad at me saying this. Whenever I watch Kyle Williams, I swear to you, people are gonna get mad, and I'm sorry. I see a lot of like a Will Fuller, a Nelson Aguilar, like those types of like deep threats, and not Nelson Aguilar on the Patriots, but like when he was with the Raiders, for example, he was good for maybe. I think we talked about this last show as well. That it's similar, like in that Rashid Shaheed mold too. Like these guys are good for maybe one or two really long pass catches every 2 games, maybe. Like they might not make any noise one game, and then the next game they might have 2 catches for 120 yards. Like I know that's ridiculous, but you know what I mean. Like it's just like they'll pop off for some random deep touchdowns. And you saw that in his rookie year. And when I think of consistency with him, I don't think of consistency in the sense of like let's get him 4 catches a game. Let's get him like 6 targets a game. I think of consistency in the sense of like let's if he had 4 deep touchdowns last season, let's get him up to 8 this season. Like that's the consistency I see in my mind whenever I think of him. I don't think of him as being like this high volume guy because I don't know. I think his skill set's just better off suited like on those clear out routes where guys get open underneath, and he's just a decoy that sometimes gets the ball thrown at him because he's able to beat a guy with his release package or with his speed. So that's just where I'm at with him. I understand like he was a third round pick, but like if he's able to produce on that level of like like I said, like he's good for a good like a deep touchdown every once in a while, I'm honestly okay with it. And then that would make him what, like the fourth receiver on the depth chart, for example. Like if he can leap Mac Hollins in terms of production, and it's Romeo Dobbs, AJ, I don't know, I said Romeo Dobbs first, but AJ Brown, Romeo Dobbs, and Pop Douglas as like the 3 clear guys that are getting the most targets, the most run, and then Kyle Williams is the next guy up. I think that's perfectly fine. Like I'm okay with his season going like that. So I don't know what if you agree with that, but what do you see with him?
Yeah, I think that makes sense just given how heavy the top of the room is with AJ Brown, Romeo Dobbs, Hollins, Booty's still there, Pop Douglas. I think his consistency does come down to his mostly just where he can be most impactful is that deep ball connection with Drake May. I think we've talked about this before a little bit,
Yeah.
maybe at least like in past shows that we've done, just establishing better chemistry and more connection with Drake May on those deep balls because we saw miscommunications pretty often last season on those plays. I mean, he finally. I mean, there were points where he did connect for deep touchdowns with Kyle Williams, like against the Giants, against the Ravens, May to Williams, and but we've seen more often than not him like them just not be on the same page.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing for Kyle Williams entering this next year to help himself really get going. But then also that's tough because he's consistently working with like the second team. He's consistently
Yeah.
working with DeVito. It's not often you see him working with May to establish that connection.
Yeah, I think with him in particular, it's it'll be helpful for him to get some good reps with Drake May at the joint practice, and however much Drake May might play in the preseason. I wouldn't expect, for example, like Romeo Dobbs and AJ Brown to get much playing time during the preseason, but I would assume that they're going to play a lot with Drake May if all 3 of them play. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things that hopefully they do give Kyle Williams some opportunity to rep with Drake May, but it's going to have to be him just playing with Tommy DeVito most of the time.
Mm.
And if he can earn the coaching staff's trust with DeVito throwing him the ball, then we might see a shift. But I think just for now, I think people just have to temper their expectations with Kyle Williams going into his second season. I see a lot of people saying like, "Oh, he's good enough to be the wide receiver 2 on the team." Like, sure, that might be the case, but I don't think it's going to happen this season. That's just something that's just going to happen with time. And right now, like you mentioned, like there's a clear hierarchy, and he just can't crack into that because of familiarity with just NFL secondaries, with familiarity with Drake May, or whether it's like a financial incentive. It's just there's a lot of factors going against him being able to rep consistently with Drake May and with the top 3 guys.
And another guy we mentioned earlier, but I think we can expand on a little bit is Kobe Prentice.
Mhm.
He had a really good final drive with Bren Morton. Morton hit Prentice for 8 yards on a shorter completion, and before a 19-yard completion downfield, which added another first down because of an unnecessary roughness call.
Mhm.
That set up the Andy Borregales field goal. He had 3 catches. Was he there? Well, I'm checking really quick. Yeah, he was leading receiver, 40 yards
Mhm.
on 3 catches on 5 targets. This is the guy who was known as just a kind of a burner out of Baylor. He had a 4.37 40, and he's been working as a punt returner in practice as well. So this guy who's trying to make his way onto that practice squad, or at least just showcase himself to other teams, and that's something that he might have done last night.
Yeah, I feel like I'm being more negative than usual today. But with him in particular, watching him play, I was like, if I had to make like a stock up, stock down, I would honestly put him stock down just because I feel like his way onto a roster, an active roster, is as a returner, and his ret- I don't know if you really paid attention to his punt returns. They were pretty bad in my opinion. Like he kept like juking himself like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then the guys would just like by that time all the defenders were already catching up to him. So he wasn't like I was fully expecting him to look jittery, but I think he's more of a straight line speed type of guy. Like you mentioned, his 40 time, like you could see that speed when he was running routes or running across the field. But the second that he was there in as a punt returner, it's just a different type of like quickness and athleticism that you need for that. And like my immediate thought was like, wow, Marcus Jones is like a very athletic guy because whenever he goes out to punt return, you could see his like agility and his like change of direction because he'll shake guys off, he'll find the open hole and then like turn the corner like extremely fast. But then watching Prentice, it was very hard for him to break off a good or break a tackle initially or shake a guy. I don't know. Like I said, I'm being more negative than usual, but it was one of those things that stood out to me in not a good way because, like I said, I feel like if he were to make him an impact on the Patriots at the very least, it would be as a punt returner or a kick returner. But yeah, I don't think he excelled at that. But as a receiver, yes, so you could see the speed and you could see like how he can create space if he were what like just like kind of like a Kyle Williams, and not to bash on Kyle Williams, but like in that role of like someone that'll just do those clear out routes or be a deep threat or crossers, stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a good point that you mentioned that because you can see that in practice, when they're going through their just their punt return warm ups, their punt return
Mhm.
rituals and stuff. When the ball's in the air, it looks like he's kind of unsure of just his ability. I don't want to get like assume like what's going through his head and everything, but
Mhm.
it looks like he's unsure of just his ability to get under it,
Mhm.
or his like approximation of where the ball is going to be. Like if it's going to be a little bit ahead of him, or does he need to back
Mhm.
up a little more? Like it looks like he's unsure. He's had some drops just fielding open field punts. Um, and I mean, he looks a little shaky. And like you
Mhm.
said, I think that's the way he plays his way onto the Patriots roster.
Mhm.
Is as a punt returner. But I think stepping up at the end of a game like that, even if it's just a preseason game, it means a lot to these guys trying to break onto an active final roster.
Mhm.
I think stepping up in any capacity like that is a good sign just to other teams looking, just scouting, watching
Yeah.
other games.
Yeah, and just to add on to that really quick, for the returners in particular, I think, and it still sticks with the offensive premise, I think that part of the reason why I like Jem Miller a lot is because he provides a kick return option as well. He's like a bigger body guy, and when it comes to kick returners, they need them to be a bit more stout. And if it's him and Kyle Williams as the kick returners, I'm okay with that. I'm happy with that because Jem Miller's someone that has that type of speed and it's I don't know how to explain it. I think Alex Barth explains it very well because he's like the special teams guy in my eyes. But he was essentially saying that like as a kick returner, you should be more stout and be able to that's more important for like straight line speed and building up your speed. As a punt returner, it's more about that athleticism and agility to break tackles initially and then find the open space. So I think Jam Miller, part of the reason why I like him to be that RB3 and not to jump back to our that former topic, but he provides that skill set. I think he's faster than Len Larison. He has like a more physical type of game, style, I guess you could say. Um, and someone like Kobe Prentice, for example, like I believe he's a little bit more slim, if I'm not mistaken. He's not too much of like a
I think he's
physical runner.
5'10", like I probably guess like 180 something.
Yeah. So it's like if you want a bit more speed and physicality in the kick return game, then I would love for it to be Kyle Williams and Jam Miller or Kyle Williams and Travion Henderson. I don't know. I don't know if you want to risk that. But um yeah, that's just mostly me just sticking with the special teams thing. I think kick return is something that people aren't really talking about, but it's going to be an important aspect for the Patriots because you saw what Antonio Gibson could do when he was their kick returner. He flipped that Miami game completely upside down, if you remember last year. So I just think it's very important for them to find a solid kick returner and someone that can contribute as well. So that's why Jam Miller comes to mind. And then also Cal Williams. I feel like Cal Williams is a lock for that role as well. So yeah, and like how we mentioned Cal Williams being more consistent, that's somewhere that he could be more consistent if he could contribute on special teams and maybe break off a kick return touchdown, maybe for the first time in his career. I think it'll be cool to see. So yeah, not to like I said, not to harp on special teams, but I do think that kick returner is going to be an interesting thing to play out because that might factor into someone being that what sixth receiver, seventh receiver, or third running back if they keep four running backs. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do.
Well, I think you're absolutely right with just that being something that's really important that might be undermined by just the general fan
Yeah.
base, like looking at other areas. Like Antonio Gibson, I just pulled up here. It was a small sample size before his injury, but they were averaging with Gibson 28 and a half yards, average yards per return on kick returns. And then the guys after that took over for Gibson, it was Travion Henderson, and then I guess you could say Efton Chisholm probably had fielded the most returns after. Why are you smiling?
That was rough. That was rough. Those times that he returned it, it was pretty rough.
um, dropped down from 20.5 to 23.9 for Chisholm, and then 22 for Henderson. And with the new kickoff rules, it's giving teams the opportunity to like scoring is kind of increasing because of the better field positioning these teams are
Yeah.
getting from the field positioning, like that they're getting off these kick returns. They're able to return it further out to like the 30, 35 more
Mhm.
consistently. And it really makes a difference. Like every 5 yards you get, that makes a huge difference in a team's probability of scoring on that drive. So
Mhm.
it is a really important factor into the success any team in the NFL has with scoring. And I think the Patriots, they need to find something better than they had last season. Henderson, I mean, maybe Henderson and Chisholm can improve, but they need to find something better with that.
Yeah, yeah, I think just to I guess you could say, if you want to close things out, one of the things that I'm going to be looking for in the last two preseason games are just who they roll out. If they try to make it more like the starters play those last two preseason games, then I think it's going to be interesting to see who. I like I said, I think Kyle Williams is pretty much a lock to be one of them, but it'll be interesting to see who that second guy is because they've been rotating it. I think Jam Miller, Len Larison, Efton Chisholm have been like the three guys that they've been putting out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So that's like a competition in and of itself. And also to speak about like the next preseason game next week, not gonna lie, I feel like it's the Super Bowl next week. It'll be a very entertaining week of football because the Eagles will be in town and I'm not mentally prepared. I'm not prepared for my Twitter mentions. I don't know if you are. It's gonna be a pretty rough
Well, I
going.
don't instigate other fan bases like you do.
I swear to you, I don't instigate. I literally post something about AJ Brown being happy, and then it's flooded with Eagles fans saying that he's the worst person in the world and all this and that, and saying a bunch of stuff that I just blocked them over. So, with that being said, I think it's gonna be like I said. It feels like the Super Bowl is coming next week. And what are your thoughts going into it? Like your closing thoughts for this, and then thoughts going into next week.
Well, I think if I'm being completely honest, I think my main thought is just points towards AJ Brown,
Mm,
and just what happens there if things get chippy because they're here for 2 days. Usually,
yeah,
when teams are here for 2 days, things really pick up on the second day, and guys start pushing each other, shoving each other a little harder. But I'm really excited to see how this team shapes up against the Eagles because I think the Eagles objectively are a better team than the Colts
mm.
this year, or just shaping up to be right
Talent
now.
wise in general, yeah.
Talent wise, definitely. I mean, record wise, we still have to see, but I think that's a tougher opponent um, for this group. And it's going to be a big test for these rookies as well, like Caleb Lumu on that second team, and whenever he fills in for Morgan Moses on the first team when he has rest. And then Gabe Akis as he's getting further acclimated to that just general NFL environment and doing these reps in practice, um, going up against a new opponent, especially with a team like the Eagles, who have had consistent offensive line play mostly in recent years. And yeah, I think it's going to be a big test for those rookies, and really interested to see how the quarterbacks perform as well because
Mm,
we've seen the quarterbacks play well this summer. Like Tommy DeVito, his deep ball was looking really good in the summer, and then we get to the preseason game, and it kind of production falls a little bit.
mm.
So we'll see if like DeVito and the second team offense can make a little comeback against the Eagles in the joint practice. So excited to see how all those things shape up and just how everybody adjusts to I think what will be just a more physical and tougher team.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be much more physical and much more, energetic, I would say. I think, the 2 areas that I'm gonna be looking at are definitely AJ Brown against that secondary or just Drake May, if you wanna say it, with the receivers. That'll be probably the most exciting battle that you'll see, like, on social media, like, whatever team posts whatever clip of what happens, that's gonna get that's I guarantee it's gonna go viral. And then the other aspect that I'm looking at is the interior. I think it's going to be interesting to see Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis go up against these interior guys with Jared Wilson's first time playing center in the NFL. And then obviously Michael Onwenu, he's a veteran at this point. But for Elijah Vera Tucker, he's it's his first football action since last season after tearing his tricep, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what he did.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, so, like, I think that's something people haven't really been thinking about enough is that he's coming off of an injury and this is his first time playing NFL football in a long time. So, to see in particular Elijah Vera Tucker and Jared Wilson going up against Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, I think that's going to be really interesting to watch as well. Hopefully, there's not much pressure up the middle. Those guys are amazing football players, so it's bound to happen. But I want to see how that offensive line holds up against the interior in particular.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of room for improvement after last night with that
Yeah,
group.
definitely.
All right. Well, I think that does it for us today. We will let you guys know when we will go live next week. Hopefully, we can keep this streak going. Yeah. So, like Carl said earlier, we're looking to expand onto Spotify and everything. So, hope to see you guys there if you want to listen on there as well. But yeah. So, thank you very much for everybody who tuned in today. We love talking Pats with all you guys. And I love talking Pats with you too, Carlos.
That's cute.
But yeah, we'll let you guys know when we go live again. Carlos, any parting words?
No, just put on your armor for next week, guys. It's gonna be rough on the internet.
It will be. All right. Well, we thank everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.
Thank you.